today we have a special guest speaker, Patricia's business partner, Connor Foy from RESTec. He's an environmental engineer. He's in business since 2010. He has a wife called me, children Colin and Brian, and for some reason. Family farm from far is enough for me. Hobbies he likes to play gaming, and he's the assistant secretary of the local club. He's interested in crime dramas. He was from Tempo in County Cavan. His burning desire to be the best version of me I can be in all walks of life.
Very noble, isn't it?
He has scored 2 goals in his senior football career. Goals with kids in the football. He keeps his success, his consistency, good or bad days, just keep going. So give a hand to him.
Good morning, everybody. My name's Connor Foy. I'm an environmental engineer from Tempo in County Fermanagh. RESTec is the business. Basically it stands for Renewable Energy Sustainable Technology, and we have an office now in Cavan on the Dublin Road. It's been a long journey, just picking up on what stuff that Andrew was saying there about a passion. I think my passion stems from wanting to, from years ago, being involved in farming and all that sort of stuff, how the built environment affects the natural environment. I suppose that led me down to the career path in terms of environmental kind of renewables and planning as well. So it's been that's the journey I've been on. Whenever I was at university, renewable energy was kind of wind turbines, and it was away from everyone, the general public. But thankfully over the last few years it's becoming more mainstream and it's become more affordable and people are more understanding about it. And as you can see yourself there with the, you see all this thing about climate change and those things. So it really is important that we get our act together, especially in Ireland where we're really off our targets. But I suppose that's a bigger story because there's obviously complications with the government getting so much money from levies on fuel. So, but I think we've all got a responsibility to try and take down our, to be more responsible for the environment. But the other thing about it is you can actually save money by going green. It's not just a case of going green and costing yourself a fortune. So today I'm just going to kind of give you a general overview of renewable energy technologies so that the people in the room get a feel for it, that it is actually attainable for the normal person in your houses, in your businesses, in any buildings you go to, and that it's not just a case of new builds or fancy stuff. It's actually some of the guys here do bits and pieces of it. Tony from the heat pumps and Adrian from energy efficiency. So it's about getting that incremental and then moving on and then, I say, taking it from there. So today is kind of just to kind of let you know about the cost, performance and reliability, to kind of nail some of the myths that are about renewable energy technologies, that the costs aren't prohibitive, that they are reliable and they do perform. So those are the outcomes that I wanted to focus on today. The talk about sustainability, and it was defined by these guys who've lots of time on their hands, but basically it's about saying that what you're doing today is replenishable, so you can use it again and again, and it's about basically putting things in or using resources that can be replenished in a sustainable way, and that it's not affecting generations to come. Again, just some of the stuff I was talking about there in terms of where we're coming from. We're coming from very fossil fuel led industry, and we have to move away from that. As you've probably seen on TV, they're talking about electric cars. They're talking about moving away from the carbon rich grid at the moment to more renewable energy. It's a really big thing. Because we have so much work to do, basically, and people are ingrained in the old thinking instead of maybe thinking about outside the box. So even from the building technology, building fabric, people are so used to having an oil burner, they want a stove in their house, but the new technology is there, and just not from improving your structure means that you don't need a stove in your house. You don't need to have it, because if you do have it in your house, you're actually going to be roasted. It's going to be too warm. Because you can improve your house by spending maybe the exact same money or slightly more or slightly less, and get a far better performance for your building, and your running costs are lower. The technologies that we deal with and that I've been dealing with since I graduated in 2008, wind, solar, biomass, hydro, wave and tidal are the main ones. I'd say if Adrian McCabe was here, I was talking to him last week, he'd give me a wee bit of a slagging about the cash for ash that was embroiled up north. But the thing about it is that all these technologies work. The problem with it is whenever they're not installed right, or they're not assessed correctly at the start, and you're putting in like all you know from your own business, once you do an assessment, sit down with your clients, you see what their requirements are. It's the same thing that we do. We go in and we see where the client is, what do they need, and then from there you get a plan and you devise a plan and you get the proper installation teams in place. So they do work. Reliability is not an issue, but it's all about getting the right team, and I think that with the experience that the RESTec have in general and our installers and the team that we have, that we can lead you through that journey from screening, feasibility, installation and maintenance. Again, those are the three ones that are kind of most familiar. At the moment, wind is very difficult in terms of, I suppose, look, there's NIMBYism to an extent. It's very difficult to get them across the line, and in most instances they're not really applicable for your normal households. Unless you're using a lot of electricity, wind turbines aren't going to be for you. Solar PV is probably the best technology for the general public and for businesses, because it's easy deployable on existing roofs in most instances, and it's maintenance free, and the technology's at a good level now where you don't have to be worried about it, and there's government traction behind that at last. Well, there's grants, there's household grants now at the moment, and there's also farming grants through the TAMS2 mechanism. So in terms of the wind, you've got your simple wind turbines, and solar you've got your what they call solar thermal, which is solar water heater, solar photovoltaic cells, which is your solar PV, which that is shortened to, and then you've got your air source heat pump and your ground source heat pump. So basically the way they work is that they take the energy from the air, but they do use a bit of solar again, but they can work 24/7. And then your biomass is your wood chip boilers and wood pellet. Basically the wood chip and wood pellet are slightly different versions of each other. So instead of the timber being changed into wood chip, it's changed into wood pellet. And some boilers work better with the wood pellet than the wood chip. Anaerobic digesters are something again this country is starting to look at. There's been a couple of papers released recently from the government about how basically you can use farmyard manure, food waste, slurry, and generate that into electricity. So basically it goes into a big digester. It's mixed round, the gas is released, and that gas is then burned in generators then. And as I say, in other countries, these are happening. Just unfortunately here they're not, but you will see them pop up over the next few years. Wind turbines, I suppose, look, we all know they're mostly three-bladed. In fact, there is turbines with two blades, so they're just horizontal and they go round. Ireland has got one of the best wind resources in Europe, and if the site is selected correctly and everything's moving, like there's a lot of technicians in Ireland that can actually help you with maintenance. But I suppose, like everything, you need to get plan permission and you need to get grid connection as well. The companies that have potential for single wind turbines on their land, don't necessarily have to worry about grid connection. If you can use it all on your own site, it's a lot easier. You don't have to deal with ESB to the same level, and the cost don't be as the same. So that's just the turbine there, a base. So you've got your stairs up. I've worked on 400 single wind turbine applications in the north, and I do safety. I do lots of different things with the wind farms at the moment. On Wednesday, I'm going out to one of the biggest wind farms in Ireland, in Donegal town, doing a safety audit. So I'm going to be going around the site and seeing, all the controls they have in place. So the experience that we have, it's from assessment the whole way up through to you know, helping out with people who are on the ground. So, like for example, there was a wind farm in County Tyrone last year, and they were having issues with their monitoring. They kept getting these, they kept getting alerts to their mobile that there was issues, and they thought that was no problem. But like there could have been serious issues on the wind farm, and they wouldn't have known anything about it. And from the input, my input into it was basically, you know, you're putting people at risk if they go out to that site, and maybe you're, you know, thinking nothing of all these alerts. And when that went to the top board of the management, they said yes, and they got it sorted out. So it's even wee simple things like that there that we can go in and make a couple of recommendations, and that's only in a very simple, that's in a very simple level. As I say, there's two solar technologies. The main one is the solar thermal and the solar PV. Solar thermal was very popular in this country, but it's really going to be dying out now, because in fact it was the only thing you got from it was hot water. With solar PV you can actually get hot water from that as well, but through your immersion. So basically when you're generating electricity from your roof, it goes through your inverters, and whenever your base load in your house is looked after, it goes, there's a wee mechanism of electrical thing that you can put basically to your immersion. So for 6 months a year you get hot water. No bother. So the main components, I'm just going to, so that's PV panels installed and your inverter in the house. Now that can be in your roof space, or it can be somewhere where it's handy. Three main components of your system, of your panels, obviously, your inverters, and now what's coming on is batteries. So you've basically, instead of, one of the issues with PV up until relatively recently was you were generating electricity and you couldn't use it, so it was floating onto the grid, you were getting nothing for it. But now you can save it to use when the sun goes down, and there's a lovely wee cycle there. So instead of maybe getting 30% savings, depending on your usage, you can maybe bump that up to 70% by just putting batteries in. That's kind of just a general example there of how it works. Basically the sun onto the turbines, or onto the panels, through the inverters, production, and then if it's not used on site, then it goes through onto the national grid. Unfortunately, as I say, you don't get anything for it if it does go there, so you're trying to use it as much as you can. I say those things, the solar thermal, are outdated now. If you're going to build a new house or get Part L, you need to be thinking about PV. It'll get you, bring a house from say an A3 rating to an A2 or an A1 or a B3. It'll move you up quicker. And there's just a couple of photographs of them, and that's how they, basically the way they work is they're relying on the heat. So they're basically gathering the heat and putting it down into your coils. You're all familiar with the coils in your cylinders. They basically heat the water. So it's not just about, whereas PV works off daylight and not necessarily heat, this requires heat to heat the water up to heat transfer. Other technologies just at the moment in terms of, and I know Tony was here one day, he was talking about them, your air source heat pumps, basically taking the ambient temperature and changing it. Basically, if you can imagine a fridge that keeps things cold, in reverse, this is how the air source heat pumps work. And when you put them together with PV, it means that you're generating electricity, your heat, but you're also then generating the energy for that system off your roof, which means that you've got a greatly reduced fuel bill. And that's just an example of one there installed, and as I say, those are the main components there of it. And again, that's just a kind of a nice and biomass. I'm going to skip on here, guys, to one that a couple of slides that are more important. That's just the general things that I've been talking about. I'm a passive house, certified passive house consultant. Basically, they're a German institute, and you know the Germans are like, they are so into things, when they get into it, it's down to the decimal point, whereas here, we have an attitude to do rightly. Oh, sure, that'll be all right. Them guys there, it's all calculated out, and it's mind-blowing, as I say, what we can do if we put our mind to it. And that's where we go, that's where we come in. We go in from the start, and we try and, you know, it's a bit like, this is probably there's 5 components basically in the passive house. You've got your windows, your thermal insulation, your thermal bridging, and your air tightness, and then your mechanical heat and ventilation, which are the 5 components of building a very energy efficient house. Then you add in then your PVs and your air source and your heat source. But if you get the 5 components right, the work that your house has to do to heat it is greatly reduced. And this is the one I like because it's hard to explain to people sometimes where you come. So the earlier you're involved in a project, the design, you have less, the more influence you're going to have and the less cost. But as you know yourself, if you're doing a retrofit project, the further you go into a project, the less influence you're going to get and the more cost it's going to take. So it's best now, the way we say it is, like if you're involved at the start of a project, regardless of what type of thing it is, if it's a house, if we're involved from the start, we'll have more influence, we're going to keep your cost down, and you're going to get better results. So listen, thanks for your time, and I hope that was a good introduction to renewables, and you aren't afraid now to ask questions about it, and we'll hear from you soon.